Ian, how are you?
Hello, good morning.
Hi, how are you, Ian?
I'm all right. I'm top of the world, actually.
Terrific, terrific. Whereabouts are you at the moment?
I don't know. It's dark.
Okay.
I'm in Portugal.
Oh, right.
But that's not strictly true. I was going to say the sun's just coming up, but it's not. It's the grey's just coming up. The mist is coming up again. But we're expecting sun in the next couple of days. But at least it's warmer than England. So
yeah.
Yeah, I spent Christmas and New Year with my family. Had a fantastic. Just took the phone off the hook, and we had the most fantastic month. A good quality time, and now I'm off again, getting my head down, doing a bit of work, and getting into shape for the year ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are coming back to Australia, and you've been here many times over the years. Is Australia a place you always look forward coming back to?
Well, yeah. I've got a lot of friends there, obviously, and a lot of memories from Australia, and and it's always very pleasant, very, very pleasant. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, after years, it's strange when you're first on the road. You go, wow, the Eiffel Tower, wow, look at that, wow, the Taj Mahal, and oh, great, the Grand Canyon, whoa. And then a couple of years later, you go, seen that, done that.
Yeah.
So what you do is you just go, you suddenly get calls. Oh, do you remember me? And it might be a journalist or a fan or somebody you met, a barman in the hotel, or you know, somebody in the business or another musician or whatever. And gradually you establish people that you know in each place, and so you look forward to going back and seeing the people and catching up, and you it's, to be honest, far more enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, some of the songs that you guys perform on your tours are nearly 4 decades old now. What is it about the early Deep Purple material that it still makes it enjoyable for you to perform on stage?
Well, to be honest, I think if we just performed the songs that were 40 years old, it would be pretty boring.
Right.
What makes them good and what makes them exciting is the fact they're surrounded by a load of little kids, which is the younger songs that were written 30 years ago and 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and today. And I think it's the same old thing. You know, if you serve up the same dish every day, no matter how much you like it, you're going to get sick of it sooner or later.
Yeah.
So it's all about the ambience, it's about the surroundings. I mean, I think that applies to so many things. I mean, if I go out to eat somewhere, I'm more interested in who I'm going to be with than what the bloody food is, to be quite honest.
Okay. I read somewhere that you guys are working on a new studio album. Is that correct? Could be. There's not much. We work on a pretty ad hoc basis. I'll tell you how it goes normally. In fact, I'm expecting a phone call from Roger Glover any time now. And he'll probably say, well, should we get together? And I go, yeah. And let's phone the guys, and let's phone the office and find somewhere, and then we'll all go somewhere, and then we'll all turn up and say, how you doing? How was Christmas? All right. How's the family? How's the dog? How's Nottingham Forest doing? How's Sunderland Nil getting on? And then we'll pick up our instruments with a cup of coffee and go in, and we'll sit down for 5 days later. We'll come out, and you know, we'll be on the way. There'll be half a dozen songs written. Right.
So that's how it works, pretty much. As I say, we've never planned anything in our lives. Everything has been fairly spontaneous, and I think it's good that way. I think it goes back to the old days when there was people used to run interference all the time, producers and managers and record companies. They wanted to come down the studio, and we used to say, bugger off, you know, you can't come in. You know, you're nothing to do with it. You're the business side. You go and sell the record if you want it, and do that. So, and we're not interested in doing 3-minute songs for radio. So that puts the commerciality out the window. I mean, of course, this great division came down the middle of the line, but we stuck to our guns, and I think it worked out because it changed the industry quite a lot. And that's when you had the division between pop groups and what we used to call rock groups. Pop groups used to put out singles and wear really amazing clothes, and the rock groups used to put out albums and ignore the press.
Yeah. I was reading about the band in the very late 60s, where that
sort of main lineup got together, I suppose, and it seemed that you guys are sort of looking for a clear musical path. I know you did some orchestral projects that John Lord composed, but then with that first album, it was a very kind of clear statement as to the direction that the band would go in within rock. What are your sort of clearest memories from the making of that particular album, and I suppose being in a studio and looking for that musical direction?
Well, it's quite incredible. We used to always look for the best musicians we could find. I'm talking about when we were kids in our first bands down the street with acoustic guitars, broken strings, and all that sort of thing. And he'd always try and steal the drummer or the guitar player from the band in the next row because he was really good.
Yeah.
And then everyone got very student-like about the music, and you'd study the blues, and you'd get all these obscure records and whatever. It's all part of the learning process, and a lot of people drop by the wayside as writers or musicians or performers, and then all of a sudden, after years of kind of paying your dues in that respect, you get the gig with Purple, and I joined Purple with Roger Glover. So we were not just a singer and a bass player; it was more like a songwriting team that fitted in pretty well. And then you suddenly realise the company you're in, and you've got, the amazing Richie Blackmore, who was the session player for Joe Meek in the first independent studio. So, his technique and his knowledge of the guitar was, light years ahead of anything that we'd ever heard before. His showmanship too, because he'd worked with Screaming Lord Sutch and everything else. So he was a great showman as well. And then you got John Lord, with not only an actor, but he's got a musical background. He's studied orchestral composition. And so his knowledge and appreciation of orchestral music brought into Purple all of those incredible nuances and the melodies and the construction that his talent and skill brought in. Ian Pace, big band swing, Buddy Rich, and all of that sort of thing. So he understood that rock has to be swing against a straight beat. That's what makes rock and roll. And so he knew how to swing. Roger, all things folk, and myself, I'd been everything from opera to boy soprano in the church choir to my dear young Elvis Presley and Little Richard and Buddy Holly and all that stuff. So the idea of all of this coming together and the chemistry that was just explosive in the rehearsal room. The first song we wrote was, I think it was Speed King, and just a jam. No one had any idea what was going on. Roger Glover was fooling around with another song. He said, I don't recognise this song. And I studied all the albums they've done. And of course, it had never been written before. It was what was called a jam session. That was his first ever jam session.
Right.
And you've got to be hot. You've got to be a good musician to do that.
Yeah.
Then you got this thing with John and the concerto, and it was unsettling because that was one of the more powerful elements in the chemistry of the band that was sort of appeared to be a dominant feature, and which was at a time that we were trying to keep everything balanced and equal. It was all this democratic talk and everything else. So it put a few noses out of joints. But it wasn't until 1999, years later, when we did it again with the London Symphony at the Royal Albert Hall, I realised what it was that John was doing, and it was an epiphany for me. And I thought, you idiot, Gillan, you idiot. You didn't appreciate, you didn't understand what it was. I was too ignorant and too young at the time, and too fragile, I think, and hadn't been around the block. That's what experience does for you. But so all in all, I can see, it's like throwing two rocks in the water, so all the ripples were asymmetric, and it was weird. Nobody could get a hook on Purple to describe them or whatever. Very strange, but beginning of a great voyage.